Okay, good. All right, so my presentation is on SQL access to VistA. Um, so if you guys don't know by now, I actually work for YataDB. That's my day job. And I help support our VistA customers as well as work on our SQL product whose name is Octo. So this is YataDB, and you guys could read this. We don't just do M, we do other languages, and we can store data in any format you want. And we run on Raspberry Pis. I have had the fun experience of porting a VistA system from an x86 server to a Raspberry Pi in order because the person using it was moving it to another product, and so I know that VistA runs very well on Raspberry Pis. Okay, so Octo. Octo is basically serving a need in the VistA community, and so you may know that just the fact of life is people just want data queried from the system, and they usually want it in what's today an industry standard to query data, which is SQL. So, and that's essentially what Octo is providing. And there were other products in the market that do SQL, but at this point in time, I believe that one of the big issues have been in the VistA community outside of the VA is that people want to do SQL, and those other products are actually no longer mainly marketed to marketed, and you cannot even buy them at this point. So in any case, Octo is a YataDB application and requires YataDB functionality. You cannot run it out of the box on GTM, but once you can, the way we recommend you run it, and it'll be over the next few slides, is you run it as an application of a replicated instance of your database. The replicated instance doesn't have to be our originating instance of the replication doesn't have to be YataDB. It could be GTM. I'm going to skip this demo because I know we're just starting late. So just going to keep the schedule because I'll just do a single demo at the end. So I kind of talked about this already, is why do we need SQL access? And the reason is that a lot of like business analysis type stuff, and as you know, Chris Combs talked about yesterday, people do expect SQL, and that's kind of the business standard now, and a lot of people just want it to be there. So it's a good plus to have it available. So this is kind of what VistA. The next few slides, the next few slides will tell you how Octo is kind of deployed, and so this is basically what VistA kind of looks like, and the architecture we recommend for Octo looks something like this. Is that the data will be actually maintained in a separate database, which is it's kind of over here, and Octo would run off the replicated instance, which is over here. And we have a tool that's used to update take the fileman data dictionary and project it into an SQL data definition. DDL is data definition language that could be ingested by Octo. Oh, here we go. I was going for this slide actually, where it says it's replicated global. So that's pretty good. All right, so time for the demo. And so I will start. I could spell it correctly. No.
Do I remember correctly that Squirrel is open source?
Yes, Squirrel is an open source client. It's the one that we actually provide the best support for. All right, fingers crossed. It was working just earlier today. All right, so this is Squirrel, and I'm gonna show you, like, just pick a big realistic query, which thank you to Chris Combs for supplying it. This essentially gives you, it's from the patient file mainly, so you could see the source tables, patient, and then the patient movement file, and that essentially just gives you a the actual admissions that you have and where the patients are located. So think of this as a census, a census basically tells you which patients are admitted in your hospital. I'm going to go ahead and run it, and here you are. I actually get the result. So I could look here, and you could see that the patient here is in ward location, so and so. And if I scroll over, there's the room and room bed over here. So that's pretty good. I actually did edit this query a little bit. Originally did not have patients whose age above 65. I added that. I could just remove that. Let's run it again. So this is just all patients. Let's add it again, and I just want to show you a feature of Squirrel, which is pretty cool. If you type a dot and press Control Space, it grabs the data dictionary and shows you which fields are available. This is a very nice feature. So I could say patient name like, oh, I already have something like that. It's okay. I can remove this. So patient.name like, and let's say that anything that starts with BCMA, so BCMA %. Let's see. Yep, here it is. It works. BCMA. It shows up all the patients whose names start with BCMA. So, all right, I'm gonna do another small query just for the sake of argument, just to show you. So we can do select patient dot name, where I'll select from patient, and that's just actually, sorry, this is stupid. You could tell, this is not my first programming language. And here's something, and then you could say age, and there you are. And so if we do patient P, we can add, this is called an alias. We could pick P dot here, P dot here, but at this point you could do P dot. Oops, let's see. Well, oh, sorry. I don't know what I did. That's okay. I think I'll not try to write SQL while we're talking. So, all right, the next part of the demo is I'm gonna get Excel, and I could do data. I could say from other data sources. So we have limited support for Excel, so not everything works. So this from using Data Connection Wizard doesn't work. You have to use from Microsoft Query. And I've already set it up, and you hit OK. And again, limited support for Excel. There are a few things that kind of work, many things that don't, but the best way I got things to work is, you have an SQL statement. You could just type it in, select name from patient, and just, let's just say name, date of birth, age, hit OK. Oops. I think I don't have I think it's date underscore. That's all right. H. All right, here we go. And there you are. So that's pretty much my demo. And I did do a little experimentation here. I actually changed the patient name and updated the query, and it updated. I'm not going to do that right now. So, all right.
How long has SQL had the ability to change stuff?
That is a very good question. So the answer is Octo now, just as of a few days ago, we now have full update capability. We have insert, update, and delete. However, it's not available to VistA because we basically disallow updating VistA tables, because VistA tables have a lot of rules that you need to be around in order to update them properly.
Is the security model of Octo such that you can call a subroutine in mumps and use that subroutine to enforce the requirements of VISTA's security?
No, just like other products out there, Octo is pretty independent of VistA security. So it does not know about Access Verify. It does not know about filemans, like file access protection. So it doesn't know about like VistA usernames and passwords. So
security in USR classes and et cetera.
Well, USR classes are not used in fileman anyway, but I'm talking about like the AFOF multiple, and or if you use the classic, the little read and write access things.
And is the indexing changed? We're generally thinking as FileMan being a patient-centric, patient-indexed file system with a patient in the top node, and the RPMS has a V file to let you do population-oriented queries. Is there some reindexing going on to let you do population queries?
So Octo is basically just let's step back a bit. It just looks at M globals and it indexes them in its own indexes. And so as far as what queries you write, they could be population health queries, certainly, but it doesn't have any smarts to know that a specific file is a patient file versus not. You have to write all of that code.
Sam, you said it uses its own indexes. Who's it? Are we talking about Octo's indexes?
Yes, Octo uses when you do a query in Octo that requires using an index, it builds its own indexes. It does not use FileMan index. There is an issue there for building using FileMan index, but at this point in our current architecture, I honestly don't think that's going to be possible because we handle nulls very differently than the way FileMan handles nulls. But if it's very big, it's a big issue for you, let us know. So. Okay, and let's see. So, any more questions, by the way? Sorry.
You had some, you know, I can remember back when Chris was doing the presentations, there were some really thorny problems he had been working on, and you probably have resolved. I was wondering if you could discuss that just a little bit.
All right, let me think about the actual current problems we are having. So, there's a problem we now have known. So let me discuss what I think Christopher's problems were. Do you remember, by the way?
No, they had something to do with multiples and something, but I don't remember what the something was.
Multiples are fully handled, so we don't have a problem.
And expecting them to do computed multiples is a bit.
Okay, so computed multiples, I've looked at. That's kind of. I'm hopefully, you know, maybe in the next month or two, I will be able to fix the computed multiples issue. I already know the FileMan code to do it, and it's not a problem. I can definitely solve it. So that's not going to be an issue.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. So,
could I just jump in for a minute, Sam?
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the answer to whoever asked the question about you know, going through FileMan, one of the things, the key things that wasn't completely, you know, clear because we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about it, is the fact that what Octo does is it takes that SQL DDL that is generated from FileMan and it puts that DDL in M globals. And when a SQL query comes in, that SQL query is converted directly to mumps global accesses. So in effect, what's happening is that a query comes in, it's just straight mumps at that point to access the data and return the data back to whoever's asking for the data.
Okay, thank you, Bhaskar.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see. So Octo status, I need to talk about where things are right now, and I think there's at least two users, and there's probably a few interested users who haven't looked into it. So we've made our initial production release, and we have gone to a continuous release model. So basically, while we do have milestones, we test every single release gets tested automatically using our continuous integration pipelines, and you can get a new version in your system at any time. And you know, the other thing I want to mention, it used to be that upgrading the version was somewhat hard. Now it's pretty much automatic. So whatever things we do just happen. Things are actually much better now as far as upgrading. So it's pretty nice. All right. So this actually, you know, I've put this presentation, you know, a few weeks ago, and so there's even more updates on this now. So now we actually have like essentially the most important SQL write functionality, and that's the thing I haven't mentioned is, you know, Octo is not just an SQL engine for VistA, it's a general purpose SQL engine. And it's we've at this point we have most of the write functionality implemented, which is insert, delete, and update. For people who are actually like still interested in M, I mean, still using M as a backend, and you have to map tables correctly. We have the create table statement is not much more flexible on specifying globals. We also have if exists and if not exists now is implemented on create table and create function, drop table and drop function. Octo is now much easier to install. Previously, you had to do a git clone and just find the tools and figure out how to invoke them. Now you could add -- octo to IDB install and it will install Octo. And next one is my favorite feature because I implemented it. Octo now has read line history. That's the Octo executable. If you use some other client, they keep another history. But Octo itself now has history, so it remembers what happened last time. I've shown you Excel support. I've actually mentioned like making Octo easier to use. I forgot to put this, but I just mentioned it, which is upgrading now since the last time we talked is much easier. Previously, you had to do a lot of like manual steps if you switch versions. One of the things I've actually picked. I'm working on the VistA DDLs right now, and some of the things some of the changes I'm making are we're just making word processing fields like easier, faster to extract. And I'm trying to think what else did I fix recently in the DDL that's of importance. Well, I think that's pretty much it, and I'll be working on computed multiples sometime soon in the future.
Part of the reason why computed multiples exist is there a way of doing a view from one file to the other? Do you have views in SQL implemented?
This is Chris Combs' like top requests for us. And the answer is no, we don't have views implemented yet.
I can comment on that. So basically, the Octo roadmap is, the first milestone was getting read-write functionality for mumps applications like VistA. The current milestone that we're working towards, and when I say milestone, a milestone to us in Octo is just the release of a collection of related features, because as Sam mentioned, you can just install Octo at any time and you get the latest tested code. So the next release that way is going to be functionality for doing read-write applications, and this will be read-write for straight SQL, where if you're using today something like Postgres or MariaDB or one of those, you could use Octo instead. And then views will, a part of what comes after that. So we're sort of trying to come up with sort of logical combinations of features that will work together to give related functionality. Because if you have insert but you don't have update and delete, then insert is not quite as useful as it could be. So that's what the releases are going to be.
So, I mean, you extract the database and then you do the things you're planning to do where you can write and all that, but obviously
we don't do database.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead, Nancy. My fault.
I'm curious about if you write back, you must have to, assume that the extract you did is what you're going to use, and you just leave it there? Because, I mean, if it's continuously getting triggered to update from the VistA instance, for instance, it might overwrite what you just did with your SQL. So I assume that you're going to do the write to a stable extract.
So,
Presumably?
Nancy, there's no write back to VistA.
No, I know. That's why
Okay.
I'm saying. So if you're going to write back, you're going to write back to the extracted globals, right? The extracted thing that goes into the, I don't know what you called it. You
So
extract VistA.
I think, yes, so let's take VistA out of the equation now. So let's pretend VistA doesn't exist. So when we're using Octo to do like a full read-write application, just using SQL, it's not going to live on a replicated instance. It will actually be its main instance. That makes sense?
In other words, we're not talking about an M database at this point.
Well, it happens in the background, but nobody knows. It's just like it's like you're using Postgres or MariaDB or Oracle. You don't know what's the technology behind it. It just runs as an SQL engine, and it's the main database.
Okay.
So Nancy, let me try and give you sort of expand on that answer. So we don't actually extract the globals. So Octo actually runs on the actual globals, but we recommend running it on a replicated instance simply because otherwise you're going to have an impact on production. Now, the reason we don't allow updates to fileman globals, and maybe someday there will be a mechanism to do that, but the reason we don't allow it today is because you don't just go into fileman and update a global. There are all kinds of rules that have to be followed for updating each field. And right now, Octo does not know about all of those rules, which is why for fileman and for VistA, there's no updates permitted right now. But maybe someday there will be a mechanism where when you want to update a field, we can provide a function that allows Octo to update the field. But in this case, because we're running on a replicated instance, there needs to be, if you want the data to change in your production instance, there needs to be a way to move the data from the replicated instance back to your production instance. And it's very common in high volume systems to run the query instance on a different system than the production instance so that you don't have any impact on the production instance from the queries that are run on the query instance.
Right. I think I actually get that. But what I'm saying is if you're planning to write back, you're writing back to the replicated instance, right? Not to the original. And therefore, if you're using triggers to update this replicated instance, then if you write back to the replicated instance, it's possible that your trigger is going to clobber what you just updated. So you should keep your replicated instance disconnected from that VistA instance if you want to do that, right?
Well,
Nancy,
not quite, because you don't quite allow updates to fileman files on the replicated instance. Now, let's say at some future point we do allow some mechanism to update fileman globals through some super duper function. What will happen is then in that case you will also run Octo on the production instance and use that for your updates. And then the updates will then go to the replicated instance where you're running all of your queries which can load the system. And those queries will then be running on the data that is updated in production.
Okay, so I think I screwed up. So you take a replicated instance, and then you're extracting things into a SQL database?
Extract. No extract. So Sam, can you go back to that slide where you have
go back to that, please.
This one, right?
Yeah. So
there are
no
globals. Isn't that an extracted from your replicated globals?
No. That's essentially metadata. So when you take let's say that you have the DDL from fileman, that DDL gets compiled, and that compiled DDL goes into Octo globals. So now when you have a SQL query coming in, either from the terminal session to Octo or through a client via Postgres, what the SQL engine does is it looks at that compiled DDL, and taking the SQL query and the compiled DDL, it actually generates direct M code that accesses the globals directly. So
Okay,
the
so
Octo globals you can think of those as essentially cross-references, compiled DDL. Those are all the metadata that Octo itself uses. And what you have on the replicated globals is a replica of the production globals, which is updated in real time.
okay, so then if you're going to use your write function for your SQL, it's going to write to the replicated globals, right?
So again, let's go back to, in this particular case, we don't allow updates to the fileman globals. But if at some point in the future we do provide this function to allow updates to fileman globals, you would then run Octo on the production side as well for those updates.
Okay, so where is this writing to?
So again, as Sam said, this is in the case where you're not using, so this particular architecture is for using Octo for reporting from VistA systems. If you're running Octo as a standalone SQL database, not as a VistA reporting instance, then you're actually running Octo on the production system.
Okay, so it's like we cut off all the replicated globals and everything. We're just talking about an Octo database. That's it.
Right, so at that point, that would be kind of like this. Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Like this one.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Gotcha.
Okay. All right, so let's see. All right, let's just talk about, I think that's what's left, future plans. So we've talked about full read-write support. Actually, we are well on our way on the write support. And the next stuff is we are also working on adding more compatibility with Postgres and MariaDB grammar. And by the way, the demos I've shown to you were done on this Docker image. You can try this for yourself. And I basically connected to port 1338, and there are some instructions there. Maybe I could go to the website and just show you. Give me one sec. Here you go. And I think I mentioned connecting Octo. Here you go. So you could use these instructions here and connect to port 1338 on the Docker container. And depending how you run Docker, I mean, most of the time the IP address is just localhost, but it depends on how you actually run it. And then once you do that, you could run this simple query to test it, which I could just run for you right now. There you go.
So could you paste that link, Sam, into the chat? The link to
Of
the
course.
Docker, please.
Okay, sure. I don't know where the chat thing is. Leave, stop sharing.
It looks like a cartoon bubble. For me, it's at the top of the screen.
But you also, when you highlighted, it was easier to read.
I'm not seeing it when I'm presenting. I'm trying to see recordings, share, turn off, then. You'd think that this is like self-explanatory, but it's not. Remote control,
okay,
tools.
Let me try typing it in then.
Sam,
No,
grab
okay.
the URL and
I'll
then
stop
go over to the
presenting and I'll go back. I'll not leave. Sorry. Just stop sharing. Put it in the chat and I'll go back to present. Okay. Okay. Oh,
Thank
here. It's now showing up, but for whatever reason. Okay. So back here. So that's pretty much it. And I wanted to know if there are any other questions.
I've got
We
one,
got
Joseph here. And a dumb question, you may have covered this already. So treating it as just a database scenario like you were describing, forget about VistA for a moment.
Yep.
Can we, are there plans or have you done HL7v2 or Fire integration capability?
So at this point, our YataDB is essentially, a database company. We are not really in the healthcare space. So we're not going to be writing we're not going to be writing ingesters on top of Octo for various use scenarios. However, it's not hard, and you guys should go ahead and somebody can write it. It's pretty easy.
Gotcha.
I just put a question in the chat, which was about there's a number of open source web-based GUIs for Postgres, and just wonder if you had a look at some of those, in which case your Docker container will be fully self-contained.
Huh, that's a good suggestion. So I have tomorrow. I have a presentation on a YataDB GUI, so we'll take a look at that. But if you have a specific one in mind that we should support, let us know, and we can create an issue for it to keep it in mind for testing. We already have several issues for various clients, and I can't remember all their names, but one is Jasper Reports. Another one I'm trying to remember is a web-based thing, but I can't remember its name exactly. But I mean, they are in our future roadmap.
Yes, I put a link to the open source ones on the Postgres web GUI in the chat box area. And the other idea is to potentially, I know there are plugins for Visual Studio Code, which is nominally open source. And I think there is some Postgres plugins for Visual Studio Code. And there's open source
So actually,
cloud-based
can I answer that,
Visual Studio
Rafael?
Code.
So I did take a look at that link that you posted, and much of that is things like system administration tools. And system administration for Postgres and for Octo is going to be very, very different. So I think, why don't you take a look at, at what Sam has for system administration, and then for developing code. Squirrel is what we support right now, but certainly some of the other tools for developing SQL queries and visualizing the schema, should work over JDBC as we add more JDBC client support.
Oh, great. Okay, that would be good. The other idea also is that there's an open source web-based tool called VIA. It's Apache licensed, and it allows you to have a full web-based IDE that's based on the motifs of Visual Studio Code. It's not associated with Microsoft. Google and a lot of other big companies use this to have a fully portable web-based collaborative coding. I do have a demo I could show later. It is fully working. Bhaskar knows about this. And there are plugins, lots of thousands of plugins for this. It's the most popular IDE at this point. But there's a Postgres plugins for Visual Studio Code, and probably for the open source web-based version of that. And that would, again, allow you, I have a demo of this, by the way, fully self-contained YataDB environment that you can remotely access through the web and have full control of the command line and code and file system and everything through a web-based IDE. So that would allow you to not have a zero install, just have a Docker does it all. There is code I can share. It's on. I can send a link, but I have this working.
So actually, Rafael, I in my talk yesterday on the YataDB update, I mentioned the work by Ram Sailopal, and I don't know if you remember, but a few weeks ago, I actually emailed you suggesting that it would be great to have him present at the VistA community meeting. If that's still an option, or if you can present when there's an open slot, I think people would like it.
Oh, I'd be happy to do so. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about testing?
Sure, go ahead.
I know that testing is very important to YataDB. Do you use the same framework to test the Octo SQL engine as you do for regular mumps YataDB? Or do you have a separate one? And what kind of issues did you run into?
So just like many SQL engines, especially SQLite, we spend actually most of our development time on testing, not on writing the code, believe it or not. So we spend a lot of time on testing, and our YataDB test system is actually C shell scripts that basically run various scenarios, and you use the command line basically to do all the tests. With Octo, we actually have a combination of two things. We have something called C Mocha tests, which are basically C code tests. These are not the bulk of our testing. The bulk of our testing, we use something called BATS, and we use BATS. That's also a kind of a shell script. It's a shell. It's a shell scripting thing, but it's more structured than what we have for YataDB. And we use BATS to do all sorts of things. And one big part of our testing in BATS, which is really cool, is that we actually run Postgres and Octo at the same time, and run the same queries and verify that they give you the same results.
And you do that in an automated way?
Yes, it actually runs on every single commit.
That's cool. Did you learn anything that might help with us testing mumps code from your experience testing the SQL?
Sorry, say that again.
Is there any thing you found out relevant to mumps programmers that your testing of SQL brought to your mind that might be useful for us?
I think it mainly flowed the other way. It's our experience with the extensive testing we do for YataDB informed our approach to how we do testing in Octo. And basically, it's the thoroughness and examining every single possible scenario. Like even like stuff like control, like pressing Control C and pressing Control A, and like interrupting something in the middle and then resuming it later. That's all being tested, because that's kind of has been our approach, is to test everything possible.
Thank you.
Okay.